afternoon, good morning, good evening, good afternoon. Habari ya asubuhi if you're on this side of the continent. Hello, everyone. My name is Irene Mwendwa. I hope you can hear us loud and clear. I hope that you're joining us and you're of great health today. And I hope that you're managing whatever that may be happening today in your context very well. Irene Mwendwa, as I have said, I work for Policy, which is a feminist civic tech organization based in Kampala, Uganda. I know most of you or some of you have seen some of our work. And today, of course, we are going to be sharing more about what we do. I lead feminist movement building and advocacy at Policy, and I am based in Nairobi, Kenya. I will be joined today by the wonderful colleagues you can see on the screen. They're all women because there is a very, very, very good reason as to why they are on board. And also just to speak, about their own personal experiences and their own, career experiences, just to speak about the issue at hand today, and also to make very concrete recommendations to the different stakeholders, such as Mozilla, who is the host of this wonderful session, MozFest, other very key actors, telcos, our governments, and also ourselves as individuals who are using the internet for our day-to-day engagement. So without further ado, I'll just do, an introduction of my colleagues, and then when they speak, they're also going to speak more about, themselves and what they do without any restrictions, obviously. We are going to spend an hour on this session, about an hour, 30 minutes on this session. Feel free to introduce yourself on the chat section. Feel free to also look at, our website, that is policy.org, for some of the resources that we may be speaking about today. And I'm sure my colleagues who are on this call are also going to be sharing some of the contents in the chat. So feel free to check out the chat at any points that you can see the links. And also feel free to, share any questions and thoughts about anything that any of us will be speaking about. So without further ado, I'd like to just introduce briefly my colleagues. On this call, we have Rachel Magege, who is a lawyer and agenda specialist based in Tanzania. We have Mwende Ngao, who is a digital journalist or a digital content creator, and she's going to speak about that in detail. We have Bina Maseno. We also have Cecilia Maundu and Abigail Arunga. Today, we are going to be, speaking specifically about our country legislation, our country's policy frameworks, and also our country practices towards enhancing digital safety, towards enhancing beyond the in-person safety that has been very well constituted in some of our countries, and also the plans that may be underway on some of the ideas that we can concretize to make sure that digital safety is a core part and parcel of our daily lives in Africa. To start us with, I'd like to request, Mwende Ngao, I'm going to put you on the spot. You're going to be our first respondent for this wonderful session. My question to you would be, can online cyberbullying and gender-based cyber violence result in silencing young girls and women across, the continent? You can also give us an example of your own experience if you have. Yeah. Remember to introduce yourself as well.
Thanks, Irene. That is a great question to start with. So as you said, my name is Mwende Ngao, and I am a digital content creator. And I would say that one of the things that I find is a huge problem is that there is a sense of looking at the internet as though it's separate from us, as though it's something that's far away, and not like the people who are online are different from the people who are offline. So, people will say, oh, the online world and the real world. So the things that happen online are not, as though they're not real, right? Which is a huge issue, because then it trivializes online violence, especially online gendered violence, right? Because when we look at the statistics of what's going on offline, there is, especially since the COVID pandemic started, there has been a huge surge in terms of gendered violence. And we have seen the same surge happening as well online, because online is a reflection of what's going on offline. So to answer your question, yes, online violence does make it difficult, especially for young girls, to take advantage of the opportunities that are online, the same way that offline violence hampers young girls' development. So I feel like it's yet another space, because I look at online as a public space, and women in a lot of contexts are not encouraged to exist in public spaces, especially loudly, right? So you should ideally exist in private spaces, and private spaces being the home. So you being out there is considered an issue, and being out there online and being vocal then of course also becomes an issue. So I do think that the same way that young girls and women in general, the same way our voices are hampered when in offline spaces, is the exact same way that our voices are also going to be hampered online. So yes, there's definitely an issue when it comes to being able to get your voice heard online. And I have been online for a long time. One of the first, I would say, tweeps. So I've been online for a very long time, and I've seen the development of what you call the Kenyans on Twitter. I've seen that development from when we were like less than 100 to the strong force that it is now. Because let's be honest, Kenyans on Twitter are quite a force. When we decide to get changes done, people do listen. However, there's also a lot of toxicity in that space. And a lot of that toxicity is targeted against women, especially if you're vocal. I have had to grow a thick skin, because if you are a woman, especially a young woman who is vocal, you're going to get a lot of hate. So I mean, everyone is different. For me, I have kind of learned how to just have a thick skin and to block a lot and ignore a lot. But it's sometimes I do get shocked by the vitriol, because you would literally just say something and people are in your mentions, in your DMs, just insulting you, and you don't even know who these people are. And so I can see how that does affect, especially if it's young women who are still getting to know themselves, they're still finding themselves, they're still getting confident in their voices, how that can really, really deter someone from being online.
Thank you very much, Mwende, for that wonderful background. And also going to add on to that by stating that that's the reality, unfortunately, but there has been a solution that has worked, and we hope it's going to work in the near future. We have the Maputo Protocol, which is the African Charter rights on the rights of women and girls. It's one of the most progressive legal frameworks to date in the world that has been used to advance the rights of women, with many national governments in Africa ratifying and also instituting the different policies and different legal frameworks that are going to ensure the protection of women and girls from harms such as, early child marriages, forced gender mutilation, female gender mutilation rather, sexual-based violence, gender-based violence in any form. And now we know the same legal framework presents us an opportunity to adequately use it to institute very key legal frameworks against any form of digital abuse that is garnered in the direction of women and girls. And on that note, we also continue to use, unfortunately, the examples that are being used by our governments today is very reactionary, as opposed to having, instituted legal mechanisms and policy frameworks to cater to some of these issues that women and girls continue facing online. And on that premise, our wonderful presenter, Rachel Magege, had prepared a very wonderful presentation that is going to speak a bit about the Tanzanian context. But on the same note, we will be continuing with this as a, Oxford-style chat, where we will be getting the different opinions from all of you and from my speakers. But I will allow her to just come on board and do her presentation. And I'm going to give her, I think, Rachel, for you, 7 minutes is going to be ample. And you're going to see an alert in the chat section in case you do not cover this timeline. Okay, so let me share screen for Rachel's presentation. Are you ready, Rachel?
Yes, I am.
Okay, there you go. I hope you can see it. Please take over. Rachel, can you hear me? I think we lost Rachel. Let's give her a moment. Technical.
Yes, Irene, I'm sorry, I'm back. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Can you see the screen for your presentation?
Yes, I'm sorry, I don't know what happened. Zoom just signed out and then it signed me back in. But I can see it says Irene has started sharing screen. But I'm not seeing the screen yet. I think it's just being a little slow, but can you see it on your end? Yes, now I can see it.
Okay, please go ahead.
Okay, thank you so much. Okay, thank you so much. I hope the internet will remain stable. Hi, everyone. Good afternoon, good morning. I hope you're all doing well today. We are continuing to celebrate International Women's Day. A wonderful day to all of you. Thank you so much to Irene. Thank you to Anna. Thank you to Policy and everyone for inviting me and having me speak on this platform. My name is Rachel Magege. I am a lawyer, I'm a legal consultant, a mediator, and I work in an NGO in Dar es Salaam, Tanzania. We offer legal aid to victims of gender-based violence. We offer reconciliation services and mediation services. And I'm also a public speaker and a researcher. So today, with the amount of time that I've been given to speak, I am so happy and I'm so proud to share with all of you the digital laws and provide basic rights for people when using online platforms, communications, and all the digital platforms. So I have prepared this presentation where we will first look at the local framework, legal framework in Tanzania, which is where I'm from. And to start us off, I want to invite you all to look at our constitution. In Tanzania, our constitution is the mother law, as is with many countries. So our mother law talks about many things in general, but when we look at digital platforms, digital security, I chose these two specific articles because they address that. So when you look at Article 16 of the Constitution of Tanzania, it talks about the right to privacy and personal security. Specifically, it says, I will just read it to you, that every person is entitled to respect and protection of his person, privacy of his own person, his family, and his matrimonial life, and respect and protection of his residence and private communications. Now that's a lot already in there, but the Constitution already provides for that. There's a controversial issue to that because practice, and we'll talk about that more. Article 18 also specifies that everyone has the freedom of opinion and expression. Forms with social media platforms, we say that people are free to express their ideas and their opinions, but we also do know that in as much as the law gives you that freedom to express your opinions, your ideas, in reality, that freedom is not absolute. That freedom can be limited, and we have seen many examples where that freedom has been limited, even when someone is expressing a positive idea or a positive criticism. And I'm sure we'll discuss this more in the Q&A. And after that, we have our Electronic and Postal Communications Act of Tanzania. It falls under the Constitution, and it basically just regulates all types of communication, electronic, postal, and online communication. Thank you, Irene. We can go to the next slide. There are many laws in Tanzania. Everyone, participants listening, there are so many laws that deal with digital and then online usage, but I just chose these specific laws because I feel like they're very key and very central. So one of the other laws that we have is the Cybercrimes Act of 2015, which basically addresses, types of illegal activity that happens online, illegal interception, computer systems, pornographic content, publication of false information. Sorry, my video. Yes, and it also prohibits cyberbullying of any kinds. Yes, so those are our local laws here in Tanzania. I'm also happy to talk to you about our regional laws, which we'll find in the next slide. Yes, thank you so much, Irene. So for Africa, we are looking at the Maputo Protocol, and Irene had already mentioned this to us, that the Maputo Protocol basically stands for the protocol to the African Charter. So we have the African Charter on Human and People's Rights, but the Maputo Protocol is specifically a protocol for the rights of women in Africa. It is known as the Maputo Protocol because it was signed in Maputo, Mozambique in 2003 and became effective in 2005. Now, I want us to look at these specific provisions that the Maputo Protocol itself has given unto us and has given unto all African people with regards to their safety with digital use. When you look at Article 3, it tells you that you have the right to dignity. Every woman has the right to respect as a person and to the free development of her personality. That can be understood and interpreted in so many ways. People can express themselves in so many ways, and we see this happening a lot in digital platforms, but you already have that right, and you can stand and defend your right that I have the right to development of my personality under the Maputo Protocol. So nobody should harass you or bully you online. Yes, and Article 12 says that states are required to promote the education of women and girls, particularly technology. That's what the Maputo Protocol says. When we look at science and technology, this is where digital education comes in. And I also challenge you all to look upon your states and your countries to find out if your country has signed and ratified the Maputo Protocol. Irene had told us earlier that the Maputo Protocol has been signed and ratified by a number of countries in Africa. Not all. We have to know and Protocol. I'm happy to say that the challenge still remains with implementation and with practical use of this Maputo Protocol. I also invite you to look at Article 19, which says that women should have access to credits, to training, skills development, and extension of services at rural and urban levels. When we develop our skills in the many different platforms, women should also do have the right to develop their skills in digital education. This is a right that has been provided under the Maputo Protocol. We're going to look at women with disabilities. So let's think about the different ways that digital platforms and digital safety can be inclusive also for women with disabilities. I highly congratulate the different digital specialists and experts who have even made different features possible in our online platforms, such as sign language,
Rachel, we lost you. Can you hear us? Rachel?
With, for example, Zoom meetings, we see this a lot, abilities, but there's also so much more behind. Yeah, so that is just, thank you so much. I hope everyone can still hear me. I'm summarizing. I'm about to be done. Yes. So in our food for thought, in the first slide, I had talked about. Thank you, Irene. Data privacy before. data privacy and surveillance. Yes, so I invite you all, when you get time, to look at the LinkedIn profile. This is Mr. Reed Blackman. He is the CEO of Virtue, and he's an artificial intelligence ethics advisor. I have also put his profile because he was my former professor, my philosophy professor, and he now he's now an expert in artificial intelligence. So he talks about how our discussion around digital privacy and surveillance needs more convincing and more strength if we are to advocate for better laws. You know, many times we say things like, they're watching us online, they're listening to our conversations, they're following us. But then, you know, someone on the other side can also argue, but you put in your information when you signed up for Facebook. When you're downloading an app, you click and you say yes to all the terms and conditions. Or when you do this, you're giving them consent. So there's so many things to unpack, so many things to discuss, but this is also food for thought. And one of the challenges as to why maybe data privacy laws have maybe not been given such a big priority in Africa, and I know specifically in Tanzania, I was having a conversation with Navina one day about this, that the parliament has just been pushing around this bill back and forth, and not really prioritizing that we need a data Privacy Protection Act, because they don't see this as a priority. So it's something to think about. And the other point is in gender bias. And next slide. Yes, so thank you, Irene. Yeah, so let's look at this. Let's look at how in data collection, we see that there's an underreporting of women's political participation, and also how often do we see women's economic activities being reported as much as men's economic activity. Also, when we look at scientific studies, when we look at different experiments about human beings, psychology, and all that, many times these experiments use male subjects rather than female subjects. It's very true. And also with data collection, there's a lot of bias when it comes to underreporting women's roles in historical events, positive roles in historical events. How many times in our education system, or when we're in school, were we taught about African queens who fought in military? How many times are we taught about maybe African female poets or female authors or female this and that? So there's a lot, even in media, in literature, in so many things. Most of the times, the key figures that we hear about are men. Even in the Bible, might I say, even in the Bible, many of the characters that we hear are men. Yes, so to our next slide, which is my last slide. I just have a few propositions that I recommend, and I think this will really help us. So these are just general, but I was really thinking about women in the rural areas. When we talk about making data platforms safe for women, we don't think about women in the corporate sector or in the big cities. Let's think about all women. So language barrier can be a big challenge. If we do want to make these platforms accessible and utilizing the language. We know now that many of these contents are in English, but maybe even localizing the language can really help. I also put the point of the judiciary arm of the government, and I'm saying this a lot because I'm a lawyer also, but the judiciary needs to be more competent in digital and internet skills for the quicker dispensation of justice. We have seen with COVID-19 that many court sessions are now being held over Zoom. Many judicial training sessions are being held over Zoom. So the judiciary arm also needs to be very competent about that. They might not be able to reach everyone physically or record and document all these files and all these documents, but if there's a way to accommodate all of that electronically, that can really help. And then my last recommendation is affordable prices. this is a very great point to push for policymakers, our different governments, that there should be affordable prices for, let's say, for example, internet bundles and data bundles that people use in their smartphones, for wireless networks, Wi-Fi, and also to make smartphones affordable. I know in Tanzania, I will send a link in the chat box, the statistics have shown that there are more people who have phones, normal phones, rather than people who have smartphones. The number of people who have smartphones is actually quite low in Tanzania compared to just the average phones that people have. And also our governments should invest in putting Wi-Fi in public centers. And I mentioned this because I saw that Rwanda has done this, which I think is very smart, and I think it's a great step. So I invite you all to continue sharing this discussion with me, share your points with me. I'd be happy to hear from you. And I've put my contacts in the very last slide. Thank you all so much.
Oh, wow. Rachel, thank you for the wonderful presentation. And I know we agreed that you do this presentation, last minute, as well as having a chat style kind of presentation for this session. And I'm grateful that you agreed to, this kind of change. So I'd like to, again, just introduce some of the colleagues who joined a bit late. We have Bina Maseno and Abigail Arunga, who will also be speaking on this panel. And my colleague Navina is going to share screen so that we can see them. But I will start us off with now the panel discussion that we hope to continue with for this or for the next 40 to 50 minutes. And going straight to you, Abigail. Please make sure you introduce yourself, what you do, your interests, what you love, and what you hope the internet will look like in the future for you as a woman. And I'm going to shoot this question, which I had opened with, that can online cyberbullying, or can, digital safety be a hamper to women and girls' engagement online? Can online cyberbullying and gender-based cyber violence result in silencing of young girls and women across the continent? What are your thoughts on this, Abigail?
Hi, everyone. Thank you for your patience with me. My name is Abigail Arunga. I'm a writer and journalist based in Nairobi, Kenya. Super pleased to be on this panel right now in the heat of Nairobi. This is going to be a hot discussion. See what I did there? So to answer your question, how can cyberbullying kind of affect how often women are in online spaces? Just like, first of all, let's start from the top. Violence online and offline is also a gendered issue, yes? And so when people are attacking women and girls online and offline, there's very specific things that they do that are only specific to our gender. And therefore, when you're being cyberbullied online, right? Like on the internet, you're a girl, you've gone to play a video game, and then someone is like, your boobs, something, something, something. Of course, that's going to turn you off completely. Not just because of the conservative socialization that we have as women and, with the whole Madonna whore complex, you're either one or the other, and therefore you feel ashamed for being called these things, whether or not you are these things. The deluge of insults regarding who you are, what you look like, and mainly based around your gender can be so supremely overwhelming, it can make you go offline. I think that's the most obvious result of cyberbullying for me. You will be discouraged from even participating on online discussions, from being on the internet, because you don't feel like it's a safe space, because everyone has access to you, and because of the anonymity online, people can do exactly what they want or say exactly what they want to you, right? Especially in this age of the metaverse, where you can quite literally feel what people are doing to you. Do you know what I mean? Like how there are video games nowadays that if someone punches you, you like feel the pulse, or you feel the vibration. So it's actually like they've made the violation even more physical. It's ridiculous. So I guess that kind of leaks into your second question about what I think the future of internet is. The future of internet for me is a safer space for women. The future of internet for me, maybe to swing the pendulum even further, is people not being allowed to be on the internet if they try and violate women with this particular tool. Yeah. Like if everyone could just get blocked and there could be like an offenders list and you're not allowed to be on any social media, like that, like active policing, which sounds terrible, right? Because policing is kind of something that we're trying to run away from. A lot of the time when you put policing in the hands of, whatever authority, it turns into like a dictatorship, it turns into something different. But where I am right now in my stage, in my internet journey, I just want people to be punished. That's what I want. I'm kind of like, the violence meted out on me, I want it meted out on other people. I know how that sounds, but I think you get the general spirit of what I'm saying. I would like to feel more protected by whoever is supposed to be protecting me.
Thank you very much, Abigail, for that. Also really touching on the point of legislation, which Rachel has been putting across, and ensuring that legislation and policy frameworks are used against those who met out violence or any form of concern online. I'd like to pose a question to you, Cecilia, as well, as to, what are the options that women have when they are being silenced online? What are the quick solutions that you offer when you're conducting training on digital security, for instance? Just on top of your head, even when we know that girls as young as 14 are now enabled, rather they have smartphones, they have laptops, they have iPads, and some are very interested to understand what is happening on the internet, and they find ways to secure a mobile device or a laptop. So what are on top of what you offer to your students? I know you're a teacher as well. What are the quick solutions to ensure that women continue to navigate online safely and they remain quite resilient even despite the violence that is continuously meted against them? Because at the end of the day, human beings are just human beings, and they will always be provocative and cause different forms of harm. Come in, Cecilia.
Thank you, Irene. That's a fantastic question. I hope you can hear me. I'm in the middle of somewhere. So the first question you answered. The first thing you said it very well, resilience. We educate our participants on the issue of resilience, because especially if you have a voice online, you will always become a target of online violence. I mean, that is assured of it. So first of all, resilience, developing a thick skin. And I know it's easier said than done, but sometimes we tell them that you have to protect yourself. And remember, as I say this, hate hurts at all level. Even when a stranger says something to you that is nasty, you will always find yourself feeling very bad about it. So the first thing is resilience. Second is how are you taking advantage of the privacy settings that are offered by these platforms that you are on? In light of the Paris Convention, whereby these social media platforms, the tech companies, are being forced now to take responsibility for the people on the platform. So take advantage of the private settings that are offered on the online platform. That is the first thing. And also another thing is talking to friends and family. That is very important. Having somebody you can be able to talk to, especially in terms of self-care, because you've seen people who've gone through real violence, and online violence is a public health issue. The effects are the same as physical violence. We find people going through psychological issues. So do you have anyone to be able to talk to, somebody you can at least discuss about it? And another thing is about the sharing of your information, especially if you're a public figure. We always advise to be able to be careful on the information that you share. For example, if you are away and you want to post photos, because social media is for purposes of socialization. So if you want to post photos, always try and post photos when you're back home, because immediately you post photos when you're away, already people know that you're not there. So if you have a family and who are the most important to you, you're putting them at risk. Another thing we keep telling our participants, and this one we keep emphasizing, is the issue of documenting the abuse that you're going through. Just in case you plan to take legal action, which is a long road, because the law is yet to catch up with technology in different parts of the world. It's always good to keep documentation of the abuse, just in case one time there's the law actually comes in and covers issues of online violence. Thank you.
Wow, Cecilia, that is very, very well put. What I'd like to see, and what policy is actually advocating for, is that some of the basic training in our schools, as young as kindergarten and primary schools in the different parts of Africa, have included a form of digital security training in the curriculums. And also, as much as parents are engaging with their young ones, with their, family spouses, to really ensure that touch on this issue as a very grave issue, so that this kind of positive attitudes towards engaging positively online is also a form of practice within our own communities, within our family setups, and also within our leadership structures. Bina Maseno, I know you work with women leaders. I know you work with women leaders who sometimes are not even connected and will dispute or may say, I'm not online. I don't want to go online because I'm facing this form of abuse that, makes me feel very, very sad, or, it makes me feel very bad. Key recommendations that you make to them as women leaders who are either contesting, and also, sorry, I can see my internet is unstable, and also that you make to, citizens who are engaging with these women leaders. Thank you, and come in, Bina. I hope you have been able to get my question.
Imagine, hello, can you hear me? Irene, can you hear me?
Yes, we can, Bina. Can you hear me?
Yes, now I can, but I lost you towards the tail end of your question. I think I just had the first beat in terms of the women that we work with, and then I lost you. Sorry.
Okay, no problem. Let me repeat. I'm saying I know you work with women leaders in your context, and you also work with a lot of women from the community who are active and leaders in their own right in those spaces. What are the challenges they share with you about engaging online, and what are some of the recommendations do you give them, on the spot as to how they should continue being resilient on online spaces? I hope you have gotten my questions.
Yes. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for inviting us to this space, Irene, and the larger team that you're working with. I think because a lot has also been discussed and captured by the panelists who've shared their contribution. I'll run into perhaps the two groups that we majorly work with, which is young women in urban informal settlement, young women in the universities, and grassroots women. And I'll start with young women, and also maybe just provide a bit of context. And also maybe just share some stats, and I'm sure we have some of the statistics in terms of how COVID-19 was able to drive so many women and girls out of the digital platforms. And I think I think that was 2020, I think at the beginning of COVID, the statistics that were coming out were majorly the impact of COVID-19 amongst young women between 15 and 25, right? And for the young women who work with in the university, for them, their resolve has always been to quit the social media platform. So what does that do to you? So as we all know, the pandemic has moved most aspects of our lives online, right? For you to be able to work, for you to be able to study, for you to be able to, to communicate, for you to be able to do your business. So what does that do for to this young woman who's actually quit this social media platform? It means even if you have a business, you're not even able to benefit from the opportunities that the digital space provides, right? It means it also hampers your opportunities to even study. It means your voice is curtailed because what the digital platform does is to provide us with a platform to speak up. So it means you're being robbed of your agency. And I think one of the panelists was talking about political participation. We have seen how, especially our politicians, have moved to the online space, like to also leverage on digital platforms to share what they're doing, to engage their citizens. So what does that do to you when you're actually not even in that platform to engage your leader on policies that actually address your needs, right? So that is on one level. And I think I also want to highlight now the impact on the grassroots women that we work with. So for the grassroots women, so majority of them are not even able to tap into the internet space because of accessibility. And I think just to paint this picture, the thing with accessibility is the person who has access to these tools controls the narrative and the discourse. You know, it's interesting. Yesterday, I was having a conversation on female engagement in political spaces, and we were analyzing the number of male politicians who actually own radio stations, right? And I kid you not, almost all our governors currently own radio stations, and some of them are even waiting to launch them during, you know, like after the primaries and all that. Very few women on radio stations. What does that do? Given that even in the urban informal settlement, people's primary, one of the primary sources of information for people in the rural setting is actually the radio. It means they're able to control the narrative, right? So the same thing even with access to tools, technological tools. Whoever has access to them controls the narrative and the discourse, right? So at the end of the day, whatever they'll churn out out there, it will keep on excluding you because your voice, like you're not even able to add your voice to whatever is being churned out in this digital platform. So more and more, even with the first speaker, when she was talking about more and more, people are not getting to know what you're all about. People are not getting to know policies that you care about. People are not getting to know the spaces that you want to occupy, or the in the political space, because you're not actually in those digital platforms. And also lack of knowledge. And I think Cecilia also touched on that. Lack of knowledge and information. And I think in a different cyberspace, I did share, we have some grassroots women who decided to occupy and seek elective office in this particular election. And sometimes by the time they realize that they are being trolled, they're trending in different platforms, it's like 3 days. They're like, oh my God, I didn't know this. Oh, it's actually my child who told me. How do I go about this? Oh, I think now people don't like me anymore. And it's because they didn't even know where to start from, like that's not even their, like engaging, they're not able to take advantage of the digital platform to either sell their agenda or to understand how it can work for their favor. But also in terms of maybe real quick, to even talk about recommendation, I always applaud organizations that have also tried to also create networks that actually support women when they're actually affected by online gender-based violence, because also the mental health aspect that comes with actually being trolled is not a joke, right? It's not a joke. And at times you find that even as you exit that digital platform, no one is even checking up on you. And you can imagine the impact of anxiety, the impact of depression on every other aspect of your life, whether it is work, whether it is your career, whether it is your family. You can imagine the impact of mental health on all those areas of your life that you care about, right? So in terms of also forming a formidable network where you can actually get support when you're impacted by this. I think that is on one level. And then number two, also understanding these tools that you can take advantage of that Cecilia mentioned. And I think also, lastly, just also add on to what the first speaker had also spoken about is how do we strengthen our laws to actually accommodate the new forms of violence that we actually see online? Because if you look at our Kenyan laws as well, they're very vague in terms of what constitutes actually online harassment, and also what are the channels, like where do I even go to? Like right now, if I'm harassed online, like where do I go to? Do I go, like which office even is going to cater to that, right? So because these forms of online violence, keep on evolving, day in, day out. How are we able to accommodate that and fight for spaces that actually acknowledge our existence, right? And I think I'll probably leave it at that, Irene, and then I'll continue contributing to the conversation. Thank you so much.
Wow, Bina, thank you so much for your wonderful background and context in which you work with. Everyone who is joining us today, Bina is based in Nairobi, Kenya, and works with local women leaders and the communities in different informal settlements here in Nairobi. Just to pick on one of the best thing that you have told us today, or one of the biggest discoveries specifically for Kenya, is that the media is owned squarely and majorly by men. And in Kenya, it's increasingly being owned by men, with many leaders who have managed to accrue wealth from their different businesses and leadership positions, being able to, have their own new or startup radio stations. And we know to date, the radio is one of the biggest form of communication, or rather a way of passing news globally, and it's not different on this part of the globe. So going to speak about this, I'm going to invite Mwende, who owns a digital media platform. Maybe you can speak to us about some of the experiences when it comes to even registering this platform as a business in Kenya. What did this entail? What are the challenges you experienced? And also, do you think it's easier do you think it's easier for other people to register as opposed to women? And also, can a young girl who has a dream of even owning a media house just wake up and execute this dream without facing many hurdles? Because at the end of the day, we are looking at African feminist digital futures, and to see how the internet is allowing us to continue organizing and to continue to gain an income as well as our dear counterparts. So Mwende, come in, share your experience about owning a digital media platform, and also the work that you do on a daily. What are the hurdles you experience? Thank you.
Ooh, thank you so much, Irene. I'm really loving this conversation. I was just writing notes because I'm getting a lot from all the speakers. So I just want to go a little bit back and start with something that Rachel said that really stuck with me when she talked about that one of the issues that she was looking at is that there's an underreporting of women's stories online, and there's underrepresentation of women's voices online. And that really stuck with me, because that's literally why I started what I started. If we look at the internet right now, it is one of the biggest resources for knowledge, and also for just connection and opportunities globally. So if you are not online, then you are basically missing out on a huge opportunity. And then also there's the thing which is really important, which is that when you Google anything, any question that you have, most people are, constantly Googling for knowledge or information. You find that a lot of that knowledge or information is not from Africa. That knowledge or information, majority of it is from the West, is from a Western lens. Majority of the time, the West meaning white, majority of the time meaning white male. So you find that the internet is yet another space in which Africa is not represented adequately. And now when you look at women, African women especially, and African girls, we're not represented adequately on the internet, because a lot of knowledge production that is happening is kind of not including us. So even now when you're talking about just basic things, like if you're looking for stock photos of Black people, that's a universal problem. You're not going to find stock photos of a lot of stock photos of Black people. Or when you Google and you find that a lot of things like hair, for example, you say good hair, you find it's white hair, and you say bad hair or untidy hair, and it's pictures of Black women, So what is that telling you? It's telling you that the internet, the way it is now, is not representative of African women. So I started to figure out, okay, in my own way, how can I contribute to the knowledge that's on the internet? So I would curate, I would do interviews of specifically women, Kenyan women, African women, just trying to do as many profiles as possible, because then you realize like there's a lot of women who are doing amazing things. You Google them, it's like they basically, if you're not Googleable, you don't exist. So they're not on the internet at all. You go to even just things like Wikipedia pages, just trying to create Wikipedia pages for whether it's women entrepreneurs, women entertainers in Africa. A lot of them don't have even these, they don't have these pages at all, right? Because they're not seeing the value of existing on the internet. So I wanted to create a platform and to figure out how can I contribute to making sure that we are more visible on the internet, because it seems that if you are not visible on the internet, you basically are missing out on all these great opportunities, because especially if you are either an entrepreneur or you are an artist, if you are not online, you don't exist. You're not even gonna get opportunities. Even some of these things, these applications nowadays for funds and grants and things, they always ask for, what is your Twitter handle? What is your Facebook? What is your Instagram? What is your website? If you don't have these things, you are missing out. You are, at a disadvantage compared to someone who has curated themselves and created a footprint online. So I started, on my own platform, just interviewing as many people as I could, a lot of young people, because I felt like these young people they're not being interviewed by mainstream media. Mainstream media generally focuses on people that are already kind of known, so they'll give a lot of space to people that are known. But if you're starting out, you might not get any space. So I started off by just offering a free online, depository where I'd say, hey, if you have, especially for young people in the arts, if you have or a business or something going on and you want a quick 5 questions and at least someone can Google you and find some story about you, email me. And it got overwhelming because I get so many emails from all these people asking me, hey, I have this business. Can you please write something about me? Or I have this mixtape. Can you please listen to my mixtape and write something about it? And then I grew that now. So into now what is called Zeda, where it's basically just trying to platform as many women's voices as possible online. Because then you realize that the mainstream media is not really platforming as many women as they could, which is kind of ridiculous, because I realized that if I can have a podcast where all my guests are women continuously, why is it that mainstream media cannot find women to go on TV and talk about something? They're always saying, oh, we can't find women. But how come I, as an individual, can find them and you can't? You have more resources than me, So it just shows that there's just a lack of willingness to actually do the work that is required to platform women's voices. Then the thing that Bina said also about ownership of media houses, right? Where it is true that these big media, whether it's radio or TV, are mostly owned by men, right? And unfortunately, in a country where that is how most people are getting their news, even if online, yes, definitely online is growing. And I feel like we're not that many online, especially like on Twitter, as much as we'd like to think we're that many, we're not. But you find that what is happening on Twitter is influencing what is happening on mainstream media, which counts for something, which says something, right? Because some of these guys do get their news literally from Twitter. So it shows that there is some sort of power there that can be harnessed. So if then you are saying that a lot of the media, mainstream media, is owned by men and they're not platforming women's voices, but you can see that the online space, in as much as it's not as powerful, but there is some sort of power there, then I think that it's so paramount for women to use the online space because it's more democratic. You're not waiting for someone to give you airtime. You just start the thing and you start, you're not waiting to pay for someone to give you airtime or to know a journalist to give you airtime or to, so for me, I find that it's so powerful because then you're able to, if you're able to use it properly, you're able to actually reach probably a wider audience and also to just start the conversations that you need to start to also be visible. And again, if you are visible online, most of the time, these mainstream guys will pick the same thing, visible online, and make you visible on their platforms because they're basically getting the news a lot of the times from these platforms. So I would say that it is tough because especially if you're doing content that is around women and is positive content, the internet is made for clickbait. So you'll find like your competition is gossip sites and things like that. And people will say, well, who's going to watch that content? Getting the funds to also be able to shoot continuous content or to get money to have writers and things like that to write content about women. You'll find like people aren't as excited as you'd think. They're like, well, how many hits does it have? Because the internet works on hits and things like that. They're like, okay, so how many people are watching? How many people care about this? And then you find that that does become a problem when they feel like, well, this content isn't selling as much as this other content, but the other content they're comparing it to is gossip, you know. So I would say that it's harder to sell positive news on the internet, but I feel like it's something that in the larger scheme of things, there is an audience for it, and the audience loves the content. And for me, it's telling me something when I see people who have been featured being put on other opportunities or other platforms because of that spotlight. And so I'm happy with the work that I'm doing, but I do feel like, of course, there's a lot of work we need to do. And especially with the training, trying to get as many women online as possible so that they are not missing out on these opportunities. I think I'll stop there for now.
Oh, wow, Mwende, I was listening to you like so keenly. Thank you so much for sharing your personal journey. I know you've faced so many challenges and you're still facing all these challenges. And what I would say is that I wish you the best, and hopefully we will be able to collaborate soon so that we can as well add on more women online. So to speak,
Irene,
yes, Cecilia.
Allow me to make a quick comment about what Mwende has said. I read a book and they say,
banning.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much. I read a book and the author said, there is no better time to be alive than now because of the internet. And one thing we keep asking, especially young women in our training, how are you taking advantage of the online platform? How are you taking the opportunity to make sure that you are reaping the digital dividends? Because there's also the issue of just being online and, going through whatever it is. But are you taking advantage of what the internet is offering? Because the internet is a blank check. It's just you to decide how much you want to pay yourself. So the likes of Kina Mwende and the rest is such a commendable thing. And we hope more women will continue doing that, so that we can also be able to be part of this bigger thing that the other gender is reaping from. Thank you.
Oh, wow. Thank you for that. One day you can see your story is something that you need to make sure is really online for people to really be inspired. I'm going to pick on some of the media aspects that you have shared with us, Mwende, and speak to Abigail, because Abigail, of course, as you all know, is a media profession. She's a professional, rather. She's a journalist. And I'd like to ask you, Abigail, from your own personal experience, do you think there is benefit of being an independent journalist as you are right now, or must you be attached to a media house? Do you think that despite the clickbaity kind of work, do you think that there's benefit for African women and girls to also just curate their own stories on the different social media platforms or online platforms that are available? Because at the end of the day, they're showcasing what they're doing and also giving recommendations to different actors. Please come in and let us know also your own experience and how being an independent journalist is either benefiting you or also how it's a hurdle. Yeah.
Sure, certainly. Sorry, I'm trying to switch on my video. I feel like we're talking about internet and I don't know how to use it. Hold on 1 second. Okay, I think I'm having technical issues. You will just have to content yourself with the sound of my voice. So yeah, first of all, I think what Mwende is doing is absolutely amazing. I think there's a lot to be said for being an independent journalist, just because, it's in the name. When you're independent, you can do exactly what you want. You can write what you want. You're the one who is deciding what topics are of interest to you. Because if you've been a journalist in a newsroom or had to have, a man who is your boss and you want to write a story about period poverty, or you want to write a story about the border operators who were attacking women in Nairobi last week, the chances that your editor, who is most likely going to be a male, will agree to let you write about that it's almost nil unless it becomes like a public furor. Sorry, for context, last week, border operators, motorcycle operators in Nairobi sexually harassed and assaulted a woman in broad daylight. And the only way that we found out about it is because someone was recording, and the only way it became such a big deal was because someone put it on social media. So there's pros and cons to the situation, right? So the pros are someone was recording, the cons are someone was recording, so now it's out there forever because the internet doesn't forget. The pros are if they hadn't put it on social media, no one would have heard about it. The cons are someone put it on social media and now we all know about it, and now we all know her, and now the government has to pretend like it cares about women, which is something that is difficult for them to pretend, right? So if I wanted to write about that story from a super emotional point of view, which is entirely where I'm coming from in that entire situation, my boss is most likely going to be like, and these are literally words that I've been told before in my column. I have a column every Saturday in the paper. My female boss actually literally told me, can you be a little bit more cheery? Is everything doom and gloom for women? And I'm like, I'm usually like, have you seen the world? Do you not see like what's going? I don't know what it is that you want me to be cheery about. Like, yes, women are great, but like very real things are happening to women. And the more you want us to do less doom and gloom about women and feminism, the more doom and gloom there is. Do you know what I mean? So for me, the newsroom was a bit stifling for me, both offline and online harassment. I was harassed in the newsroom. I get harassed online all the time, especially if I mention anything about LGBTQI or pro-choice, anything. It's just your regular brand of harassment. But you see, I'm not answering to anyone. These are my views and I can say them because I'm not being paid to say them. You know what I mean? And so that has been helpful for me in communicating exactly what I want to communicate with my writing, right? And so I think the more independent journalists we have and the more independent bloggers like Mwenda, the more people we have putting out material for people to read that is unbiased and not seen through the unenviable, male gaze, the better for all of us, I think. I don't see myself ever going back to a newsroom, for example. I can't conceptualize how that would work. So for example, at Nation Media Group, which is where I predominantly write for, most if not all of the people I work under are male. So my direct boss is a woman, and then everyone else above her is male. And so the people who have the final say in the stories, the final say in the layout, the final say on how we're going to do anything, they're all guys. So this is why I think it's important, why independent journalism is important, why the internet is important, because it gives you a chance to do exactly what you want to do. Yeah.
Oh, wow. Thank you so much, Abigail. Just to share with you all, I made an error. I thought the session is ending at 30 minutes past the hour, and I've just noted it's ending right now. And so I had planned out with more time, and that's why you can feel like we're halfway into our session. So I'd like to say, that this has been a very wonderful session. Unfortunately, we have to come to the end of it because there's another session that is going to take over on the Mozfest Plaza. There's a site that they're using. And I'm going to ask that you all share maybe your Twitter handles or your social media profiles on the chat section so that everyone can be able to reach out to you. Rachel, I hope it's going to be very quick because unfortunately, again, I made an error with the time. So please come in and share your quick thoughts. Yeah.
Yes, thank you so much, Irene. And I just raised my hand so that I can acknowledge all the panelists. It was such a pleasure being with all of you, and I've learned so much from you, Cecilia, Mwende, Abigail, everyone. So thank you all very much. And I really, really hope that the discussions we've had today, we can continue implementing. Especially, I'm so glad that Mwende had put emphasis on the part of reporting women's stories and women's data. I really hope we can continue having these conversations together. So thank you all very much. I just wanted to say that before we go. And I hope we can have another session like this so we can have more time. Thank you, Irene.
Okay, just to say, ahead of this, the end of Mozilla Festival, my colleagues and I are going to put a summary and we're going to share with our speakers today so that they can make quick inputs, and then we're going to share with you all, some of the summary and recommendations that our speakers have shared today. Please be on the lookout and follow us on Twitter so that you can see more of our work, which is policy.org. Thank you very much, everyone. And I'm so sorry about the time mishap. I completely made an error and I'm very sorry about it. Thank you for accommodating our extra few minutes. Andy, please take over and have a nice evening. Have a nice day to the rest of you. Goodbye.